I've been talking quite a bit over the last few weeks, dropping hints here and there about this game that I've been playing, and man, I am so excited to finally talk about it in full. That is, of course, Kena Bridge of Spirits, which originally launched on PlayStation back in September of 2021. And it is now September of 2024, and I have experienced the game in its full glory. After it, so originally it launched as a PlayStation exclusive on console and I believe, an Epic Game Store exclusive on PC. And then it later went on to Steam and Xbox, which is how I'm playing it. So right off the bat, thank you to the publisher for sending us over a copy of the game to play. I've been playing on the Xbox Series X, and essentially, if you don't know about Kena Bridge of Spirits, it's from Ember Labs, and it's I'm going to say a 3D action adventure game with elements of different kind of, or DNA of other games in it, which we'll get to in a little bit. But you play as Kena, the titular spirit guide, who essentially enters this village that is being plagued by this, maybe it's the Dragon Age in me that's going to say this, but this blight that is kind of like sapping out all the life and nature from the different parts of this village. And so you are, as a spirit guide, in charge of helping spirits move past their, like, whatever it is that they've kind of left behind, you know, their fear, their love, their et cetera, like something that they've left behind that makes their spirit unable to kind of move on. You are there to help them in that process. And so that's the general plot. The main game itself consists of 3 different big pivotal characters that you're kind of branching off and you know, helping them move on. So you have to help 3 big characters move on in the spirit world, and then you know, you get to the end of the game, and you get to the mountain shrine that's kind of like looming in the distance the whole time. And look, I have to say this, and I really hope that someone who worked on this game, this video finds its way to them, because there are so many times playing this game where I was just like, oh my god, this is beautiful. Or like it's game that so continually impressed me, not just because obviously it looked good, which we'll get to, but it presented this package, this whole, everything combined. It made a product or a piece of art that I just really enjoyed exploring and spending time in. So I'm not going to get too much more into the story. I think it takes, for me at least, it took me about until at the end of the second act to really, for the game to get me going emotionally or anything, like get me really hooked. And that's because it takes you kind of that long for like Kena's character to actually be not introduced. I don't want to say that in a weird way, but like kind of really fleshed out. You know? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we both went to the same conclusion. So that's how I'm not going to get much more into that kind of the emotional stuff, or the story plotline stuff. But the gameplay wise is where this game kind of becomes this weird cocktail of different things, which also is part of why I think, Nick, you would really enjoy this game, because it has, and I think you had suggested this or kind of asked me this on a previous podcast, but I'll reiterate and answer it here, about if it's like a Zelda game at all. And I really think that it has elements of Zelda, and I think there are certainly like stretches that you can go to say, oh yeah, it's like a Zelda game, because you can be like, oh, there's 3 different, if I was to, again, being vague, there's 3 different major things that you have to do, and each of them involves kind of mainly puzzles and traversal to, as well as obviously combat through third-person gameplay that it does involve a bow and arrow as well. Again, I'm making generalized statements about Breath of the Wild and stuff here, but you can do that, and you can also say same thing with how in the distance, you can see this objective that's there that you will eventually like kind of reach. So those
is it kind of like Uncharted in that way, where like it's not like open world, but like you constantly see your goal ahead of you, or is it like open world? Because that's
so
that
it's
I
not
know I
necessarily it's not necessarily open world, but it's you could say it's open world, but the way it works is that you're progressing through it. Like as you play the game, you're opening up parts of the map. Like again, I'm not sure if the word is right, but there's blight that kind of restricts a lot of the map right off the bat. And as you're cleansing these areas is when you're like the map will open up to you. So by the end of the game, you have fast travel points all over this map, and you'll have cleaned out the map, so you can literally just walk from one part of the map to the other and fully explore it. But right out when you start off, it's the main town center, and then wherever you have to go, the direction that you can
do. You do a lot of like backtracking, or is it like once you unlock a new area, you're kind of moving forward?
So you clear one area, and then you go back to the town center, and then you go to the second area, you go back to the town center, third area.
Gotcha.
But and so like the town center kind of connects all three kind of large areas. However, one of the things is the village itself, the main village, has these houses that are again overrun by kind of vines and pustules. And as you're playing the game, if you explore, which is part of the reason why it took me so many weeks to get through this game, is because I didn't want to just rush through it. I wanted to actually experience everything. I wanted to go off the beaten path. And when you do that, you'll occasionally find you'll find rot, which is those cute little like things that hang around Kena and kind of help her in various tasks throughout the gameplay or throughout the game, including they can pick up objects and move them if you wanted to, specific objects. You can't just like pick up any object you see. But it can also like interact with certain like water bubbles to create like a cleansing or being. I'm terrible at describing things for being someone who's published two books, but I don't know why I flex. That wasn't meant to be a flex, by the way. I wanted to make that clear. But anyway, going back to the topic. They can also, in combat, you can, use the rot to kind of distract the enemies or even kind of hurt them a little bit too. So the rot have different functions, and you collect them by, again, going off the beaten path, finding little things and picking them up. But also you can find packages that are essentially, it's spirit mail that is for houses in the village. So when you get a spirit mail, you'll get a little point on your map that you can then at your own time go back to the village for. And when you deliver the package, you can go in. There's sometimes a little bit of a few enemies, but you can clear them out and get bonuses, like some sort of little perks here and there. So that can include an additional rot. It can include the game's in-game currency, which there's a few different kinds of in-game currency, because there's the generic kind of just glowing crystals that you use to buy outfits and masks for your rot, which is pretty cute. But then also you have these kind of spirit circles. Again, terrible with the names here, but those allow you to actually upgrade your abilities and stuff. So you can get more arrows for your bow right off the bat. You can get later on in the game, you can increase to how many bombs you have, what the rot can do. You can kind of upgrade that stuff. And so there's a mixture of things that you can kind of balance. And it's one of those things where it's not so intrusive that you kind of always have to be like, okay, what can I upgrade? But also, I find myself occasionally after every boss or so, I'll go in and see, I have enough to upgrade this thing. And they're like, most of the items I think are pretty compelling to use or to upgrade. So I kind of just, I'm slowly upgrading the whole skill tree as I go. It's not like a big a point of contention or something you have to really pay attention to. So that could be a plus or minus depending on what you're going for. Now, along with the Zelda aspect of it, there is, of course, the Souls-like aspect. I think the Souls-like term has been thrown around as well when describing the game. And at first, I was like, really? I mean, like, I don't know. I beat the first boss in like 30 seconds. But yeah, no, the game escalates. So there's certain bosses, nothing that's like, oh my God, this is infuriating. I'm never playing. Like, it's not Elden Ring, Nick. I'll say it right out front. But there are certainly times where I have to go gamer mode. I have to put my elbows on my knees and go, all right, let's calm down here. Let's figure out what's going on. And some of the bosses really oh yeah, just like that.
Gamer mode activated.
Gamer mode activated, and you have to plan out things a little bit carefully. Use all the abilities that you have at your disposal, and also, I mean, like one of the things that you'll see a lot is enemies will have these like crystals or these orange sap like crystals, and those crystals during combat, if you shoot them, will give you will essentially drop that you can pick up to get rot abilities, so like actions out of your rot, or so those are the things I was talking about where you can set your rot to distract or attack an enemy. You can also use it during boss fights to heal yourself. There's little flowers. Usually if you see flowers just conveniently placed in the game, you're probably walking into a boss fight. And so, those kind of things you can kind of are telltale signs of perhaps a Souls-like game. But it is not a full Souls-like, and as in there's no bonfires and stuff like that. Enemies don't respawn every time you travel. Like that kind of stuff isn't there. But the difficulty of the bosses, the nature of kind of getting to know their moveset, when they go into their second phase, okay, what are they doing? How do I beat them? Not all bosses are just go in swinging. Some bosses you need to throw a bomb, like they'll be attached to an object that you have to throw a bomb at, blow up the bomb, which you blow up the bomb by shooting an arrow at it. And then when that happens, it opens up this crevice that then you can shoot, or a crystal that you can shoot 3 times to again take down the shield around the boss to engage the boss in combat. So stuff like that. It's not a simple game. At least, I'm playing on the normal difficulty. So if you play it on story mode, it could be a bit breezier. But
is it a fun level of challenge, or it's like I know you said you had to activate gamer mode, but like does that ever get like to the point where like, okay, like I get it, like let's wrap this up, or like is it fun to go back and try to get over them?
Not for me, and I think maybe there's times it got close, but usually it's like 3-4 times, and some bosses even later on, sometimes there are bosses that I got that on the first try, but there are also bosses that are a bit more technical, and I think the game has a really nice way of ramping up the difficulty. So some of the early bosses, like I said, are easy, not all of them. In fact, at the start, I think some kind of just overworld enemies are more tiring than the actual bosses at the start, but regardless, as you go through the game, they get more difficult, and it is more satisfying too as you ultimately kind of overtake them. And also, I'm gonna guess that it's gonna play similarly on the PS5, but the game is really smooth on the performance mode on the Xbox Series X. On top of the fact that it looks so nice so often, it's just like an easy game to just pick up and stare at. And of course, I will confirm on my notes there is a big plus sign that says photo mode, because this game has a great photo mode. I spent way too much time in this game's photo mode, and it has one of the craziest features of photo mode that I really haven't seen in many other games. But so when you're in photo mode, you can unfreeze the action, so the world kind of just continues to breathe, which is cool. But then also you can change the mode to from photo mode to tracking, and tracking essentially lets you set a I'm going to use technical terms that I know Nick can follow. You can set a starting keyframe and then an ending keyframe, and the camera will like run that pattern back.
That's cool
on its own. Yeah, so like stuff like that is a cool addition. So yeah, photo mode is a huge plus. And I mentioned earlier, I'm not at this point. I'm just going through my notes, so you're gonna get a vomit of things. So Nick, if you ever have anything specific, let me know.
Yeah, sure.
There's along with going off the beaten path to explore and get some of the the collectibles and side stuff. There are also challenges if you're again want to spend more time in this world. There's shrines that you can go to, or sorry, not shrines, chests that you can go to that are locked, and to unlock these chests you have to do some sort of a challenge that can be defeat a certain amount of enemies in a certain amount of time, or and there's some ridiculous ones. There's like defeat 15 enemies in a minute, and these guys are not going down very easy. But then some of them can be super, just like survive 3 waves of enemies, and you're good to go, that kind of thing. There's also trials, which again you have to go back to the main village for, but these are again a series of competitions or challenges that include using your bow and arrow to get all the targets, surviving a certain amount of time or a certain amount of waves of enemies, and when you complete them, you get new outfits for Kena to wear. Not that I was personally not that I was very invested in that aspect of it. It wasn't like I think the raw masks are much more compelling for me than the outfits. I didn't think they were that crazy, but again, it's a very
fun thing to go for.
Yeah.
Like, I'm guessing that you didn't have to pay real money for, so it's always nice when you see that.
Yep. And it's again, it's another reason to kind of test yourself in the game, spend more time in that world, and see how it is. Oh, also, I have to, Nick, I forgot to mention another reason why I think you should play this game. This video is actually me pitching why I think Nick should play Kena Bridge of Spirits. It's not directly Max Payne, but if you jump and you pull out your bow and arrow, everything goes into slow motion, and it's so satisfying.
That's very Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, because I constantly do that. Like even if it's close quarters combat, I'm just like, hold on, let me get a jump in, so I can it just looks cooler that way.
I should also say there's nothing about Kena that's like ever put me off of the game. It's just a game that I haven't gotten around to yet.
Sure.
So street pitching me here is I'm a willing recipient of playing this game. It's just finding the right time.
Yep. Especially with Dragon Age looming right, or over us all.
Yep.
A few quick things. So yeah, I mean, look, you're gonna get new abilities again, like a typical game of this standard or this formula. You're gonna get new abilities continually that not only affect combat, but also just the way you traverse. So I'm going to say the one thing that I've reiterated, so I'm not spoiling anything else for players, but the bomb, along with being something you can use in combat, there are certain objects that you can throw the bomb onto, and when you make it explode, it'll actually trigger the objects to move in a way that you can kind of temporarily access different heights, like different areas by mantling these objects. So stuff like that is a nice way to change up what you're doing at a minute by minute basis. I also think that this is what I'm saying. Areas are the perfect size, I think, for me, because they are just big enough. Like every time you enter a new part of the map, right, they are just big enough to be like, oh, that is cool. Like I can see the things all the way over there, but it's not so much that you're like, that's going to be a chore getting up there. It's just the perfect size where I've always kind of been, my interest has always been piqued about, oh, what can I do? Where does that go? Now, the biggest plus that really ties it together, I've talked about how the visuals are good. It constantly reminds me of like a Pixar movie with the way the animations are, the kind of the certain characteristics of the facial animations especially. But the thing that accents that so well is the score. It has an absolutely incredible soundtrack. There is a flute sequence in the soundtrack that it just like gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. It is so good. So absolutely phenomenal soundtrack from this game. And it just kind of plays lightly in the background as you play, and it hits right at the perfect time where I wouldn't be doing anything. I'm just kind of exploring, and then the soundtrack will really take center stage as I'm doing it. And it's a good formula. Now, that being said, there are a few things the game, a few things I could probably complain about the game. And so I'm gonna fly through them real fast. First of all, voice acting is hit or miss sometimes. Some like the main characters are, I think, are really good, but like sometimes not gonna name any names, but some characters are not, leave a little bit to be desired. Fishing Shrine Puzzle doesn't feel well explained, I think. I'm not gonna, again, I won't explain too much because I would get into spoilers, but yeah, there's certain things that I feel like the game could have maybe explained itself a little bit easier there. Also, combinations of the tight camera in terms of like how far it is from Kena, and a weirdly finicky like lock-on mechanic makes some boss fights a little frustrating. Not all the time, but it essentially grew to a point where I stopped using the auto lock. Like, if you hit R3 by design, it's supposed to like lock onto an enemy, but I find it either doesn't work all the time, or like the boss will go off frame and the camera just doesn't keep up with them. So stuff like that. That being said, similarly, speaking of bosses, some bosses can be bum rushed. So if you really want to, you can just go in, attack, not stop, like just really time it right, and they
get them in a stun lock. And
and you're cleaning through them. But with that said, I mean, look, there's really just minor stuff here, occasional performance stuff that like beard will sometimes look weird. Hair looks fine, like character's beard will sometimes look weird. And then again, if I was to really nitpick, things like pressing A every time there's a dialogue said is also weird. I feel like it looks like a Pixar movie, and it has all these kind of really cinematic tendencies, but then after every dialogue, you have to hit A to advance to the next dialogue. And so like characters will deliver their line and will just kind of stare in their, in like their whatever emote that they were in during their dialogue delivery. So stuff like that, I feel like it would have been.
That also sounds very Zelda. I wonder if that's like an intentional choice or not.
Honestly, it could. Yeah, I could definitely see that now that you said it. I didn't really put it together, but it could be. Could be intentional, but stuff like that is a little weird. But that is all minor stuff. All of that does not hold a candle to the fact that I highly recommend playing Kena Bridge of Spirits. Not just to Nick, but for everyone listening. It's on PlayStation, Xbox, it's on PC via Steam and Epic Game Store. So if you have any interest in playing it, you could probably play it, and I hope you do.